So in this video I'm going to go over how to diagram game 3 from Prep Test 65. Okay, so here we have, we're choosing 5 out of 8, so that makes this a selection game or an in and out game. So essentially like a grouping game with 2 non-overlapping groups. All right, so we have 5 in and 3 out because there are 8 total. And then we're selecting from a group of different foods, and we have 3 categories or subsets. So this is an in and out game with subsets. That's one way of categorizing it. I believe that's the 7-sage terminology. Okay, so we have 2 desserts. I'm gonna put them in capital letters. 3 main courses I'll do lowercase printed, and the side dishes I'll do in cursive. So this is what I find to be the most helpful way to distinguish between the different subsets in a game like this. So yeah, I just kind of use different fonts, I suppose. Another way of doing it would be to do subscripts. So for desserts, you would have, you would have F with a little subscript D, G subscript D. Then for main, you could have little subscripts, and for side dishes, you would have T, S, V, S, W, S. Yeah, so that's another way to kind of visualize that. Okay, and then the rules, we have to have a minimum of 1 of each type. So minimum 1 each, 1 of each. Oh, but also there's this hot food component. So I just underlined the hot foods. That's how I did it. You could also star them. So star means hot. So multiple ways to identify them, but you do want to identify them somehow. And then we need at least 1 of those, so a minimum of 1 hot food. Okay. Then we have our conditional rules, or if-then statements. So if P or W is in, then the other one is in. Okay, so if P is in, right, then W is also in. If a W is in, then P is in. So if W is not in, then P is not in. That's the contrapositive for this guy up here, right? And the contrapositive for this one here is if P is not in, then W is not in. Okay, so at the end of the day, we basically just know that P and W are going to be together. So they're either both out or they're both in. Okay, so P and W are a pair. Right? That conditional statement is a biconditional. Okay, so both of the ideas, so P being in, W being in, P being out, W being out, all of those things are both sufficient conditions and necessary conditions. So knowing anything about either of these players, or not anything about them, but knowing the position of either of these players, whether they're in the in group or the out group, is going to tell you the position of the other player. Okay. So the next rule, rule 4, if G is selected, then O must be selected. So if O is not selected, G is not selected. If N is selected, then V cannot be selected. And if V is selected, N cannot be selected. Okay, so a couple things to note here. It's possible that O is in and G is out. Okay. If G is in, then O has to be in. but if G is out, we don't know the position of O. If O is out, then G has to be out, but if O is in, we don't know the position of G. For this rule here, it's important to note that it's possible for both of them to be out. They can't both be in, at least one of them has to be out, okay? But it's possible that both of them are out. If we just look at that rule on its own. Okay. We do have a situation here, like I said, we need at least one of these to be out, so we could just add that information to our diagram. That can be helpful. So one way that might be helpful is if P is out, right, then we would say, oh, well, W has to be out as well. So that means that V or N is in, and every other player would have to be in. So that would be T would have to be in, O would have to be in, F and G would have to be in. So that's handy. Also, if O is out, we would get more information, right? So if O is out, then G is also out. N or V is going to fill up that space, so V or N will have to be in, and then every other player is in. So F is in, P is in, W is in, right? P and W are together, and T would be in as well. So we can see how when we know that this spot is filled, that it's easier to fill up the other spots and then recognize, oh, if those guys are out, all of the out positions are full, I can put everybody else in. That's a handy deduction to be able to make. If you have any specific questions from this game that you'd like me to go over, just let me know. But hopefully now with the diagram and a bit of an understanding of the rules and how they might work together, you can go through the questions on your own.